those perspectives, I want us now to focus on what just happened at the Kenya Revenue Authority recently. And we saw there's a new board chaired by the former UDA Elections Board chairperson, Engineer Anthony Mwaura. And of course, there are some 5 board members that were sworn in January of this year, and 37 days later, they made a decision to remove 4 commissioners and announced that the Commissioner General Githi Mburu had resigned. Of course, those changes now have been communicated, and then after that, we saw communication from the same chairperson indicating that several reliefs, waivers, tax refunds had been suspended until further notice. Philip, what has been your reaction to these changes? Were they that necessary at this point in time?
Well, any government that comes into power wants to have their person in charge of revenue collection. So it was inevitable that they were going to have their own CG. I think that's inevitable. And it's any government. If you look at transitions from Moi government into Kibaki, Kibaki into Uhuru into Ruto, you want to have your person at the helm in charge of revenue collection, because that's your cash cow, that's your engine. That you need your person sort of like taking care of that. So that was inevitable. I think it was coming.
Right.
My worry is when you make it so drastic, it then sends shockwaves or uncomfortable into the business world, because then there's an issue of predictability and calmness. Okay, and that for me was a bit of a concern. And then when you have a chairman, and I think corporate governance needs to come back into play. We've had tremendous gains with the KRA when since it was formed as the KRA Act in 1992. When, from a good corporate governance perspective, the drafters of the KRA Act gave mandate to the Commissioner General, gave mandate to the commissioners. They've got the powers then to communicate changes in policy. It's the first time in the history of this country that we've seen policy shift or change what was communicated by the executive chairman, and only for it to be rectified properly, I think, 48 hours later by a deputy commissioner in charge of policy, communicate that this is the right thing. But again, you cannot just have what I call roadside declarations which are not backed by law. I think the beauty about our country, our constitution 2010, and looking at our tax statutes, they're anchored in law. And I think when I saw that the suspension of reliefs and stuff, it's not backed up by law. And those changes they did come to Parliament, to Honorable Makali and his team, for them to adopt. So Parliament, in this current Kenya Kwanza regime, you have a robust role to keep everyone in check and doing the right thing.
Okay, what are your thoughts, Honorable Makali, when you see those changes at the KRA?
You know, Sam, if I were Mwema talking, because this is Mwema interacts with the KRA on a daily basis. What he does for his living is interacting with the KRA. If I were him, I would have come out very strongly and condemn what happened. You know, the thing is, in a parastatal or an organization like a KRA, you can easily change the chairman, because that's a political appointment. But when you get to commissioners who have been able to get to that level by going through the ranks without following due process, I think it's very unfortunate. And that's what we are seeing in this Kenya Kwanza government. That they want to, I don't know whether, although this has been said, the public knowledge, that is like anybody associated with the former president or the former regime, Jubilee, has to be shown the door. But I think that is very wrong for this country. They need to be reminded that in 10 years, most of them are going to be former. And the Bible says, do to others what you would want them to do to you. I don't think that's what they want to be done to them. A situation where you want to get 4 commissioners, a central institution like KRA out without due process being followed, I think is unfortunate for this country. We need to get we can play politics, and I'm a politician.
Right.
But for us to give confidence to Kenyans and our external partners in terms of the institutions, we need to respect the institutions. I'm sure in the KRA Act, it must be very clearly stipulated what it takes to hire a commissioner general, what it takes to be a commissioner KRA. There must be some qualifications, some requirements. I'm asking myself, did we see an advertisement for the new position to be taken? No. We've not seen yet. Did we see, you know, the other day we were told DCI Kinoti resigned. Later, we were told he was fired. So is it another case where somebody claims to have resigned, but later then we are told he's fired? To me, I think we are on the wrong footing. As a country, we need to say, if I'm holding an office and I'm there on merit, not on appointment, not on political appointment, on merit, let also merit be followed in terms of replacing that particular individual. So what has happened in KRA is wrong. It is sending the wrong signals. And you know KRA is a very important institution in this country. It's the only institution which, in terms of confidence, KRA and economics, our economy, are actually like twins. If KRA misbehaves, the economy will misbehave, I can tell you for sure. So we need to really protect such institutions that whatever we do, in terms of public perception, we are seeing that we are doing the right thing, even if internally we know we are not doing the right thing. So the perception currently is that what has happened in KRA is a political move, and it's not going to be good for the country. And the likes of Kina Mwema should not shy away from telling Kenya Kwanza the truth, that you are killing the confidence of Kenyans, and we are likely to have challenges. And now we are talking about improving our revenue collection. Look at the appointment of the chairman. It was very controversial. It's not a secret. People are questioning his integrity. Then within 2 months or 3 months, they changed the board. So are we getting people of questionable integrity on board, so that now the issue of integrity disappears from KRA? And I think these are the hard questions we must ask as Kenyans. We need to see people with integrity holding public positions, which demand that people with integrity must be seated there. I submit, sir.
Dr. Kiru, is it possible because the 5 board members, they were sworn in January, I'm just missing the date, but 37 days later, this communication was made. Is it possible for within 37 days, appointees to the board, which are usually political, that they have already figured out what the problem is with an authority and make such drastic measures?
I would like to avoid answering that question because clearly there's a lot of politics going on there, and I always like to stay away from discussing matters of politics and stick to the issues. But that does not mean that I'll not talk, because I want to go back to something that we refused to address and you kept on asking us.
Right.
And I'll tell you where we were reluctant to address, especially on my part, when you asked me what needs to be done in the short run to help Kenyans sail through the tough times. Why I am reluctant to answer, because the answer is very simple, that there is room for social safety nets. We need to have a social safety net to address those cases of Kenyans who really deserve help and who need help and who should be helped. Otherwise, they are likely to starve, even here in the cities, leave alone in Turkana, northeastern Kenya. But the challenge we've been facing over and over again in trying to address this issue is a challenge of data. Because without having the correct data of who exactly needs what and where they are, you find that we come up with this kind of safety nets or social protection, and it never reaches those who really need it. You find people, office people, queuing to get food during COVID. It was so saddening that you saw people coming from offices and taking food which is meant to relieve people from the impact of COVID. Yet those who really deserved the help did not did not receive that help. So the point is, we need to come up with good data and use technology, and cash transfers other than delivering the actual product could be helpful. But that can only work if we have correct data and strong institutions to ensure only those that deserve, like it happens in other countries, and even to make it quite targeting to those who need, we could condition it into something. For example, when I was growing up in the rural areas, there was a conditional public works program, meaning that, yes, we've got food for people who really deserve it, but for you to deserve this food, we've got to go and make that road that is already breaking down, or repair that bridge that is breaking down in the village. And you find that people who've got better things to do will not go to do that, or rather the condition is too much, it throws them out. So we may not say that we dig roads or we do what, but the point is we need to have a conditional cash transfer to help the targeting even better, so that those who feel like the conditions are too much, then they self-exclude them from the cash transfer program and only remain with those that really, really need it, because they will have, because the opportunity cost of their time is going to be good enough for them to undertake into these conditions, as long as the conditions are within reasonableness in terms of human welfare and human safeguarding.
I hope as you progress on, you'll also give me an answer to what I just asked. You're better prepared. Henry, what has been your experience working with the Kenya Revenue Authority, and do you think the changes that are being effected now are part of the solution, if you've had those challenges?
One thing, allow me to say, especially from an SME perspective, I will always talk about SMEs. I will first of all say that the way KRA treats people reflects the mind of the person that is leading them. As businesses, we've been having challenges, especially on the way they get money out of us. And sometimes we even think they are auctioneers. Yani they are working with the mind of an auctioneer. So we are anticipating that the new head, who is Madam Simiu, will try to change that face, and she becomes a facilitator, but not a person who twists you into submission. The other thing, and I will say it before my fellow leaders, is KRA does not know how to tax the SMEs. They expect us to have auditors and accountants, and sometimes when you're an SME, you are the logistics person, you are the seller, you are the service, you do everything. So the government needs to come up, and they don't have to struggle. You can just call a few of us who are SMEs and ask us, how do you want to be taxed? It's so easy to file nil returns, because it's actually very easy. But now, just like, and I give an example on voting. If voting was hard, if it really required a lot of mental power to fill all those forms, some of us wouldn't be voting. But now when we simplify that part and make it easier, that it's time for doing returns, I will only need about 30 minutes to do that, most of us will not be filing nil. And we just need to make it easier for the taxpayer. My one expert, please take this to yeah, take this to KRA. We want to make it easier so that the SME is not busy filing taxes. He's busy expanding his businesses and getting more customers.
Well, I hear you and appreciate, and clearly I can see you want me to go back to Kalama, my countryside, and stop practicing. Because in these ambiguities and complexities, opportunities, that's how some of us have made careers. But let me just let me just get into that. I think we've got to redefine who an SME is, because under the Companies Act, if your revenue is 50 million and below, you don't need, strictly speaking, under the Companies Act, you don't need to have an auditor. Okay? Now, you've got, because you're an SME and you're concentrating on what you know best, then allow your auditor to concentrate on what he knows best, because we are progressive as a country. Kenya decided, it was one of the first countries in Africa that to adopt international accounting standards in 1999. So we are progressive. Tax needs to be easy to comply for SMEs. I concur with you. That attempt to introduce turnover tax was quite successful because people did adopt it. There was an attempt to do minimum tax. It was done the wrong way. At that point, the Institute of Accountants and LSK went to court, and the matter now, that was thrown out, the minimum tax on how it's meant to be. But the truth of the matter, looking at our taxation system as a country, it's not complex. It's not complex.
For you.
Okay? Yeah, for me. It's an income and expenditure statement and how you determine your tax to be. But tax has always been a painful point world over. It's always been. But I've always said tax is the price you have to pay for being in a civilized society.
I'm not saying we don't want to pay taxes. I'm saying we make it simple for us to do that. Instead of, okay, if I file nil, I'll be counted as people who have filed. And remember, it's nil. But now, if it's simple and I'm able to pay 10,000, 100,000 or so, if we make it simple, it will be the best tax system. So I'm saying there's room for improvement, especially for the hawker who is running around Nairobi, for the guy selling smokies. We were talking about expanding the tax base. Expanding the tax base is not coming to capture, or it's not a capture system. It is something that we encourage people to file, and especially encourage them to be patriotic to the country.
And I agree, and I think on that, I think the draft national tax policy, which was released to the public, was a very robust public participation. It's the first time in my practice in tax that I've seen an extremely robust participation by the National Treasury. And when the revised document comes into play and is put into Parliament, indeed, I'm hoping Honorable Makalin and members of Parliament will address some of these things, because looking at that the draft national tax policy that was presented in the last House, I think they identified a couple of things. Some hard-to-tax sectors. There were low tax compliance levels for SMEs. What you're saying, that there was complexity in taxing emerging digital market, the multiple VAT rates. There's the issue of globalization because of customs administration. The tax administration needs to be a bit more simpler. And this document that has now gotten public participation, once it's out, I'd like to believe once the revised document is out, let's have come and look at what that does. Sure. Because that document then will define where we are going, saying this world is not my home, or nearer to God my thee.
Dr. Mulu, excuse me. The president has said that the target for the first 12 years of his 12 months of his tenure, not years, months, would be that to raise the revenue collection to 3 trillion shillings from 2 trillion shillings as of July last year. Do you think you're on course? And secondly, what must we do as a country, but also at KRA, to ensure that we are able to double this by 2027, as he says, at a time that majority of Kenyans feel like they have paid all the tax they could ever pay?
Yeah, I think it is achievable. For the first time, to me, I see that as realistic, but a lot of work has to be done. And that's why I want to support Henry, that even though Mwema makes a living out of doing what Henry is running away from, I think it's important that we simplify the way we do our tax returns, and more so for the micro enterprises. Because what he's saying is very right. With him, he's more concerned about making more money and expanding business. So tax should not appear like another kind of one of his key responsibilities. It should just be one of possibly get an accountant to do it for you. It should not be very difficult. But looking at what is happening currently, the projection for this year in terms of tax collection is about 2.5 something trillion, sorry. And what we are saying is, well, that, because when you look at what we are collecting, Joy will tell you that we are at 18, and basically we are punching below our weight. The base would be around 25. If we are doing at 25 of GDP, we would be doing very well. At 18, it means we have a lot of room for improvement. But this will entail a lot of strategies. There must be some administrative strategies. And that's why I was saying the issue of confidence with the KRA as an institution is very important when to the taxpayers. And anytime we start seeing signals which suggest otherwise, then that can also reduce how much we are collecting. The other issue is the tax base. We are all talking about how to bring more people to the tax bracket so that many Kenyans pay tax. And I think, to me, that would be the best solution, because you know where we are now, a lot of people are saying Kenyans are highly taxed, which means if you are just to increase the rate of taxation there, you might not achieve much. Right. So that now the strategy is getting more Kenyans into the tax bracket. And I think that's what now the Kenya Kwanza government needs to work on. How do we make sure that we have more Kenyans coming into the tax bracket? The other strategy we must address is also ensuring that we minimize the tax leakages. You know, Mwema did speak about the issue of the issue of corruption. I think this is another area we really need to take seriously as a country, and this is not for Kenya Kwanza. This is for all of us as Kenyans. In this country, it's a known secret, Sam, that guys who are working at KRA, they are some of the richest guys in this country in terms of assets and all those things. And when you look at their salaries, you can easily relate their salaries with the investments, and it automatically shows something must be working somewhere. The income is not coming purely from the salary. So I think if we're able to reduce the leakages, because there's a lot of leakages are quite a lot, that will also help. The other thing is the issue of the tax policy. And one thing, where I think this is an area where we have advantages. Unlike many other laws, which are reviewed after 3, 4, 5 years, you find that every year we have what we call the finance bill. And through the finance bill, we actually in a position to review most of these tax issues annually. So it means the Mwema and team, the experts, if they wanted this area to be improved through legislation, this is an area we can be doing on an annual basis, because we do finance bill every year. Right. So through finance bill, we can do away with some of these loopholes and make sure that we do well. But all said and done, I think the amount which has been proposed, 3 trillion, is achievable. We can even actually do
in 12 months.
Yeah?
By July this year?
No. By July this year, they are targeting now 2.5 trillion.
Oh, it has been...
We are moving from 2.01 to about 2.5. If you look at now the projection for this year. But they're saying in the meantime, that is the next 3 years. Okay. They could hit the 3 trillion mark, which is achievable. I see, especially in 10 years, we can easily do 4 trillion.
Well, yes, because even when you reflect on where President Uhuru Kenyatta found it, I think it was below 1 trillion shillings?
Below 1 trillion.
Yeah, so by the end of 10 years, it had doubled, more than doubled. What are your thoughts, Dr. Kiru?
Yes, thank you very much. I want to bring in another perspective to this tax thing. Of course, we are taxing to build the economy. That's the bottom line. We are taxing to improve the welfare of Kenyans. But what do we know from economic theory when it comes to issues of taxation, especially in a time like this? The economy is tightening. Of course, we're increasing taxes and we are reducing government expenditures and increasing interest rates to deal with macro instability, that is to stabilize prices and to work on inflation. But you know, on the other hand, when taxes keep increasing so steadily like that, they've got they constrain, or rather they reduce the GDP growth, they reduce consumption. And with the depressed consumption, that's going to hurt businesses. And when it hurts businesses, of course, in other words, we have to be very, very careful that we do not overdo this tax thing in the short run, into the extent that we harm the same economy that we are trying to protect. That is why it's important to rationalize the taxes, not just to focus on that alone, but also to find other ways to cushion or to keep the private sector thriving besides this kind of painful measures through increasing the taxes, which is necessary, right. But there has to be complementary measures to ensure that the private sector is not constrained, so that we still ensure that the same economy is safeguarded at the end of the day.
Okay, I want us to take a look at the feedback that has come to us at Citizen TV Kenya at Sam Gituku. The hashtag to use is the break, to get a feel of what Kenyans are saying this morning about the state of the economy. Let's begin with who? This is Bob Otieno. Borrowing without good planning and turning to poor Kenyans through heavy taxation to help paying debts will run our country into beggars, because majority of them are hustlers and believed in the government slogan of bottom-up economic model. Engineer Lazaro, it's not very clear from the same regime which campaigned on agenda of doing away with the country appetite for loans, now boasts by opening another application for international loans. These people should be serious and stop negative utterances. All right. Mugasia, subsidies were introduced during COVID-19 to cushion citizens against the devastating effects of the pandemic. It's totally misleading to insinuate that subsidies are politically motivated. We don't need to politicize everything. Well, Mugasi, Honorable Lilian COA, it's only fair if we collectively allowed the current administration to fix our economy through the recovery plans it has put in place. Subsidizing production is an initiative that will ensure that our national food security is guaranteed. Remy Butia, turning the economy around requires significant corruption reduction, improving accountability and adherence to the rule of law, and increasing government effectiveness concerning revenue collection, trade, gender empowerment and stability. And Godi Baraza, the economy recovery process is not a popcorn frying affair. It's a serious long-term planning that requires an all-on-board participation to attain a successful end. All political players should support this critical process. And I think this last one, J.M. Musoma, the benefits of institutionalizing production subsidies is not commensurate with damage that the removal of consumption subsidies will cause on our social fabric. This means more crimes, prostitution, diseases like HIV and AIDS, STIs and mental health due to coping habits. And I think it's talking about the social cost of removing some of those factors without commensurate measures to help the vulnerable. Philip Mwembo, we're out of time, but I want to give an extra minute to just tell me. So we've seen those changes that the Kenya Revenue Authority, we've seen those missteps in terms of communicating to Kenyans. What is it that they must do in the shortest time possible to achieve all the targets of revenue collection, but also making KRA friendly to Henry and others?
I think first is to engage and change the approach within which the Revenue Authority is communicating to taxpayers. If you remember the clarion call when Kibaki came into power, where it was tulipa ushuru tujitegemee. So we've got to change that clarion call and make Kenyans be all-inclusive. So the change of approach, I think, is important. The move to change KRA from Kenya Revenue Authority to Kenya Revenue Services must be seen indeed in words. You've got to change that. In the 21st century, we are in the year 2023. How you deal with businesses and they become complex in the year 2023 It's not how they were in 1963. You cannot deal with business with the same approach we dealt with in the late 70s during the days of Chepkupe boom. There's a whole shift. The world has changed. In a world of technology and in a world of artificial intelligence, the Revenue Authority then needs to embrace technology and deploy technology a bit more when dealing with taxpayers. But really, it all boils down to gaining trust from the taxpayers. That means building on your credibility as KRA, building on reliability as KRA, increasing what I call intimacy or bonding with your taxpayers from a relationship building, and the pain in all that is minimizing as the Revenue Authority what is in it for me, minimizing what I call self-interest. With that, we'll have brilliant Kenya Revenue Services.
And that is for the board or for the management?
It is both.
From your experience?
It is both board and management. Because if you look at the last, and again, I think it's important to state this. It's important for the Kenya Revenue Authority or the Kenya Revenue Services to remain objective and not be used as a political tool to settle scores. In the run-up to the last year's election, it was used to settle scores. The Revenue Authority became rough. They used the powers under the Tax Procedures Act, which must be reviewed by Parliament, because powers are too many under the TPA, issuing departure prohibition orders and going through prosecuting and really going gang-ho. There's need to change in there. Have a conversation. These are your clients. Change that mentality. So the change is both from a management perspective and from a board perspective in terms of just changing how you're being viewed as Kenyans.
All right, thank you all. Philip Mwema from Anderson, East Africa, Dr. Makali Mulu, Kitui Central Member of Parliament, but also member of the Budget Committee since 2013?
Yes.
Or even earlier? No.
You're right.
Okay, Dr. Joy Kiru, a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi, and Henry Kabogo here, the chairperson of the Water Bottlers Association. Thank you for making time for us to have this conversation. Some of you didn't answer my questions. It's okay. I understand that even at the university, you're allowed to attempt
the questions.
some of the questions, leave out others. It's all fine. My name is Sam Gituku. We're still following up the story of Dr. Fred Matiang'i, the former Interior Cabinet Secretary of Interior Affairs. He's headed to the DCI. Should be there now. We'll be checking if he's made his way. Yesterday, there was concession between himself and the DCI, saying that he should appear at 8 a.m. instead of 9:30 as per the summons. He's there to answer questions as to a case where he is accused he may have taken part in falsification of information, and those conversations will be going on at the DCI. Our reporter Seth Olale will be there to bring us the latest, and we'll be sure to bring it to you. Bye for now. See you some other time.